Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes is from Greed, a multinational band that I'm really enjoying. We're going to check out the group Gingerbee, all lowercase, with the track Honey. Let's dive in and see what they're bringing to the table today. Really soothing start to this. I love the warmth of the bass guitar. I can't really hear too much of an attack on that lower sound. It just sort of exists. That's why I don't know what instrument it is. I love the balance between beats 2 and 3. It's interesting how it works in little bits of darkness here. The tremolo to induce a bit of tension before releasing into this. Oh, so good. Finding beauty out of the darkness coming from near silence and building into this gorgeous section. really interesting to resolve all of that chaos in just like the most beautiful chord. Just completely abandoning the intensity for this. I wonder how long those nature sounds were there. Little rustling of the trees and bird song. Yeah, dude, beautiful track right there. What's really interesting too is, I mean, this is a post-rock song, right? I think compositionally, if this were played with electric guitars, electric bass, there is a drum kit in here, we'd have a solid post-rock song. But it's done with a small orchestra. There's some strings. I definitely heard a violin. Maybe a cello was in there too. We have a couple of different saxes. And I heard brass very briefly in the middle. A French horn, maybe. Wasn't the typical. Most bands who introduce brass, like the first instrument, trumpet. Let's get a trumpet in there. There's no trumpet in this track. At least not that I heard. But I did hear something that felt like a French horn. Is quiet. The brass was very underplayed compared to the rest in here. But it does follow this idea of set a mood, build it up, set a new mood, build it up until we get to the climax of the song, really sit within this energy for a while and then wind it down. This is solid post-rock writing. It's just not done with a rock band. And I appreciate that novel element. I think it goes a little bit beyond the novelty of it, but I do really like just having different instruments here and presenting this in a different sonic atmosphere that I'm used to hearing composition like this. The reason I say it goes beyond just the timbre, though, is because there's a lot of instruments in here, probably close to 8, 9, maybe 10. Oh, I forgot to mention flutes. Flutes are in here too. And they use all of this to great effect. One of the things I've brought up a couple of times is that in most rock bands, you have one instrument per range. Your guitar plays your treble stuff, your bass plays your bass stuff. You might have a little overlap in your vocalist depending on their range, but for the most part, if your bassist just doesn't play in a section, you don't have any bass work at all going on. And that's something that you can do with larger groups of instruments. You can have everyone together and create something that feels very full and very large, but you can also remove elements. You can have a cool treble melody that is on flute, or is on violin, or is on sax. You can have them playing off of each other with counterpoint or a canon or harmony, or you can have just one of these instruments. You have a lot more room for expressing the idea, whether that idea is chordal foundation or a bass line or a melody or a harmony or ornamentation. You can choose who gets to play that, which is just something you don't get to do too often in typical rock band setups. And that completely elevates this track for me. I'm not usually a fan of slower moving ideas, and I think part of that is simply because everything kind of sounds very samey up to a point. Whereas here we have a lot of different textures. We have bowed strings, we have plucked strings, we have woodwinds, we have brass, we have vocals, and it allows for more variety throughout the experience of this song. And so we get diversity there that's paired with the general growth of the track. But even speaking about the growth, it is not always one at a time, one layer at a time, which I think is one of my lesser favorite elements of slow burn composition. Is you create your foundation, you'll loop it back to the beginning, but now with one more layer. You play that through, you loop it back to the beginning, but with one more layer. And it's just, you stack one at a time, and this moves quicker. We still get to hear this general layering and evolution of an idea, starting with something a bit simpler and exploring it with more and more ideas. But I don't know if it's because they like to write shorter songs, or if the shorter songs are a byproduct of how they write these expansions. But it's never just one idea at a time. It's usually multiple, and they're not always in the same realm. We might be adding a rhythmic and a harmonic thing at the same time. We might be adding some flourish or ornamentation at the same time that we add a new melody line. And so we're adding multiple ideas with each repetition, which just gives me more things to look at, gives me more things to be interested in, and it makes the song have a little bit of a quicker pace while still enjoying this slow burn evolution of fully exploring this space that we're in. And speaking of the spaces that we're in, this song has a way with chords, dude. And this is another way that I think it deviates a bit from general post-rock sounds. It pulls a little bit more from classical as far as chord progressions and even just chords themselves go. There were quite a few places in here where we started off with two chords that, okay, I've heard these chords. They're kind of rocky. I can see where we're going. And then chords 3, which is going to be our leading chord, and then 4, which is going to be our resolving chord, are not what I expect at all. And sometimes we don't even hit that 4th one. We just go into the leading chord and sit there in the lack of resolution. But it's a more interesting chord than I would expect that would come after the 2 chords we started this progression with. And they continue to surprise me by adding more classical influence into a generally rocky sound overall. It gave the song an interesting harmonic palette and identity that I can't really say I've heard before. It consistently felt familiar and fresh simultaneously because I am familiar enough with the rock side of it. I'm familiar enough with the more classical side, but very rarely do I hear them fluidly interwoven the way that they are here. And it led me into some really fun feelings as, like I said, I begin to anticipate where the song's going emotionally, and it takes a very sharp turn, not in a direction that doesn't make sense, but just one that I wasn't expecting, but certainly fits where the song was going already. And through this, they get to create some really interesting emotions. The song is consistently, I think, carefree, fun, laid back, chill, but that's not what it always is. That just seems to be the default form of it. We do deviate from that quite a bit throughout here, and even right at the beginning I had mentioned that there's some darkness being introduced occasionally before it resets back to the calm. All of this culminates in the instrumental bridge to this track, taking us to the outro that was an intense layering of bordering on noise. There was, for a moment, a lot of reverb on the crash cymbal, I think it was, which was creating this pretty much constant drone of shimmeriness. Rather loud, taking up a lot of space. We have a lot of instruments going on here, some of them holding out notes, but most of them moving. Even if they're doing harmonic stuff, they're shaping out chords rather than just playing them as a whole, which I guess makes sense because there's a lot of monophonic instruments here. So we don't really have a lot of instruments that could be playing chords by themselves. Regardless though, a lot of movement on these instruments. And with all of these layered movement ideas, plus the sax that's doing the solo on top of everything, it becomes rather cluttered. even though harmonically it's still gorgeous, little bits of tension peppered in every once in a while, it starts to feel like the walls are closing in because there's just so much happening. And then in a snap, it's gone. All of this tension not going into a note held out to fade away as we shift into a calmer finale, but it just abruptly stops. Then there is a note chord that's held out that introduces a massive release of that tension, but not as resolution, as beginning of something new instead, though. And we get to wind the song down on something that kind of lost the energy of everything that happened before it. We had directionality even in the calmer moments at the beginning of the track, but this sort of just is. A comfort, a calm, an acceptance of the state of things, possibly. Not necessarily entirely positive. This isn't overbearingly joyful at the end, but it is a massive relief, if nothing else, from the intensity in the bridge. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out more of this group. I really enjoyed this track, and it's just sort of eclectic. It's a rather novel sound and an interesting combination, a midpoint of rock and classical that I don't think I've heard before. Let me dive into some lyrics on this, see if any of what I felt out of the music is reflected there. I believe this song is about the intense feelings of being in love with someone. The chorus says, "And with more fear than ever before, we are two smiling faces, and I'm yours." The verse states, "I turned into the sun yesterday, and I want to feel like this for a long time. Love comes again, stronger than the last time. It wraps me up and lays me to rest, and it's all I can feel in the dark. I hear your voice, and I'm safe." The ending of the song simply states, "I'm yours. Yes, it's perfect." The allusion towards being the sun, something so bright and powerful, so full of energy, but also to pair this against the feeling of being in the dark otherwise. Hearing your voice, feeling safe, and becoming pure light, I think, is a powerful metaphor for just how much being with this person illuminates their world. But I really like the chorus too, "with more fear than ever before, we are two smiling faces and I'm yours." As with most things that are good, they can be lost. As the saying goes, though, it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. And I think that's what this chorus is sort of leaning into, that there is a fear that this will or could end one day, but that it's worth it for all of the positivity that he feels, all of the strength, the lack of fear, never being in the dark. It's worth the risk, as most things are in life. It's a beautiful little song. I wonder then if the tension in here, the darkness at times, if that's supposed to represent these feelings, the fear, the not wanting to let go, or if it's simply trying to musically showcase this feeling of intensity, just how powerful this love is. So much so that it's kind of scary, a little unsettling and overpowering at times, but ultimately something safe to sit within. These are my thoughts on Gingerbee's Honey. What did you think of this song? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on if I misspoke? Add all of those, as well as any other opinions or perspectives or thoughts that you'd like to add about this, into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.